because I wonder, like, what's going on in America. So there's a question that one of my European friends asked a couple of weeks ago. They said, so it takes you a week to get an answer for your coronavirus test. In Europe, you quarantine yourself until you get the answer. Why don't you do that in America? What the hell is wrong with you people? And this guy, has got it. It's not just that we just have this selfishness here where I should be my right to wander around with no mask and infect other people like the senators do it and everybody does it. And it is just some weird American value system where we just don't care about who else we're hurting with what we do. And it is a very strange idea. And a lot of like European nations don't have this idea. They think you should, think about other people and try to contribute to the common good. And there's a large part of America that just doesn't believe that. They just believe in this simple-minded, heartless selfishness as a fundamental value. Also economic, right? The poor people shouldn't keep getting their $600 a month. They should go to a job which they can't get into, and their employer should be protected from lawsuits so we can force them to work on an assembly line where they're going to get sick and die because it's their fault for being poor. And the boss should just make more money, and the more money he makes by grinding people and killing them is fine. There is something to this, I thought he really got something about the American experience.
I'm glad you brought up economics, Sam, because I think this really is an economic issue. Fundamentally, there's so much propaganda, pro-capitalist propaganda in the United States, and we grow up with it, and we internalize it. And now we're seeing the effects of that. When we're in a situation where what matters isn't the economy, it's just saving lives, people don't know how to cope. They can't wrap their heads around what's going on in our society.
No, in fact, they gave exponentially more money to corporations, which the abuses from that are only starting to come out with people like buying Ferraris and stuff with the money. But they're like, oh no, we can't possibly extend this pittance of $600 that we're paying for any more time. That would just be too much.
I know, and I remember right at the beginning, like Britain said, okay, everybody's going to get 80% of their paycheck for the next 6 or 9 months with no nonsense so we can go into lockdown. And I said, why don't we do that over here? Because we just don't value human life. What we value is greed. That's our number one issue. And human life is just a tool to get you more. That's right. Trump says, oh, we should just stop doing testing so the number will go down and then I'll be more popular because people are just pawns to be used for my glory. There's this fundamental lack of caring about people in the American ethics, which baffles the rest of the world. And it's
we see this, we've been seeing this, and we see it in many other ways. I mean, examples that just come to mind immediately are what we do with data. As Europe's got GDPR as if, it matters if you ruin somebody's life by, leaking all of their identity deals. Here, who cares? It's a free-for-all. There's no consequences. Screw the consumer. Just put it all out there. Healthcare is another one. Who cares? Screw people. If you have got to go to the doctor, it's not our problem. Our problem is making sure these massive conglomerates, continue to rake in record profits.
So I thought it was quite helpful to understand what is wrong over here. I don't have to fix, but I think he really accurately diagnoses what is wrong with us.
It's kind of cliche at this point, but the problem is capitalism, unchecked capitalism in the United States. And
it's the ethic that led to that. It's this old Adam Smith, selfishness is good, greed is good thing, which we have pushed to a religious extreme. Other nations have that moderated with, well, of course you have to take care of people. But over here, it's absolute greed is good to the limit.
The weird thing is it's not even capitalism anymore because there's so much corporate socialism and corporate welfare. It's weird. It's one of the fundamental tenets of capitalism is letting companies fail. So, but we're not. We're letting our citizens fail and bolstering these companies with massive infusions of public cash.
Yeah,
so I'm going to go against the grain a little bit and say that these infusions of cash aren't necessarily bad. The only thing that's bad is the fact that we infuse these corporations with cash, and that's great, but people need cash too.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's what I'm saying. If they're saying there's not enough money, to me it's a no-brainer. Like, it should go to the people first.
Yeah, I think it should. But that's because I'm, these liberal coastal elites that don't understand the values of the heartland, because I really don't. Anyway. So anyway, then we've got people leaking out medical data.
So, yeah, yes and no. This is a pretty good story. And the reason I posted both of these up here was because the original story was, that was the original story that came out. And, the news media portrayed this like it was the hacking heist of the century, okay? It was in Australia, and these... they flipped out because there was private data associated with their COVID-19 tracking system that is operated by the hospitals. And there was a lot of really sensitive PII that went out there, like people's names, addresses, phone numbers, health information, stuff like that. Well, turns out it was a teenager who'd gotten a little like $20 SDR dongle and was decoding the POXAG messages from the pager system in the hospital, and then publishing the decoded POXAG messages on this website, which he totally shouldn't have done, don't get me wrong. But they kind of had to backpedal a little bit once they realized the means by which this had occurred, and who the mastermind criminal hacker genius was, this teenager. And now it's just a race between the officials to see who they can throw under the bus for it, so they can, wrap it up and move along.
So they were using unencrypted pager.
Yeah.
Okay. And then blaming people who sniff it out of the air.
Right, and many hospitals do this. Air traffic control does it. These are just kind of floating through the air, and usually the thing that you would not do is transmit private data over an unencrypted channel like that. I mean, the whole point of that system is to ping doctors inside of areas where there's no cell phone reception. So you would think that what you do is, you get a message on your pager, and then you go log into a secure system to access this data. But that's not how they set it up. So first they tried to blame it on the teenager, and now they're trying to, shift the blame around their organizations. Yeah.
So I think all three of your articles are the same, like, hacktivists revealing some ridiculous security flaw that really shouldn't have been that way.
Right.
Yeah. Well, okay. And they're worried about election officials.
Election officials using their own personal email. More than half of them using their personal emails.
And what is an official? Are these real government employees, or are these volunteers, or what?
Well,
election officials.
Well, so you get hired. I actually used to do this. You get hired by the county that you work in, and then they're just regular people. A lot of retirees do it. And you get paid like, I don't know, $100, $200 a day to run the polls.
Oh, and staffers running on the campaigns. Yeah, those are just random people.
Yeah, but more than half are using personal email. So how do you fight the phishing attacks?
Right.
When they're not using the email you issue that, probably set up spam filters up the wazoo, but, let me just use my personal Gmail instead. That'll take care of it.
Well, I think it's all the same. I mean, they're just a bunch of random people, and they don't have any central organization or any IT department or any money. So they are, of course, vulnerable. They're basically using home equipment.
Yeah.
And then, the latest Pangu information.
Right. So there's a bug in the hardware of the newest iPhone in the SCP chip, which is the secure enclave processor. And what this does, it's a little coprocessor that handles biometrics and keys to get into your system. And with it, you could essentially jailbreak or at least get into any of the newer phones. It's another hardware exploit that's unpatchable. However, if you scroll down, there's some bad news. So a security researcher by the name of Axiomex, I've never heard of them before, mentioned in this article that it's not as bad because you essentially need physical access to the device to exploit it. So you can't just be walking around with your phone in your pocket and get exploited. You need physical access to the device because the register that they get access to locks right after boot. So you need to be able to boot the phone to take advantage of this.
So again, you could only do it if you have older hardware.
No, newer hardware.
No, but he said the latest ones do not have a boot ROM exploit. So he said you cannot do the latest A12 and A13 systems with this.
Really?
There's a step that requires you to still use Checkmate.
Right. No, they're talking. No. So here's what he said. So Axiom said that the step, but can only be triggered if the hacker has physical access to the device with a boot ROM exploit. Oh, yeah, never mind. That the iPhones use.
Yeah. So it does not make newer phones vulnerable after all. This is like a lot of like the WPA vulnerability. It does display a weakness, but there's another step you don't have yet.
Oh, wait, no. So this elite hacker, AxiomX, says that without a boot ROM exploit, it's impossible to know whether this bug exists on those devices. So he doesn't know if it.
Okay.
He or she, we don't know who this is. Could be anybody.
Oh yeah, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, it does mean that you're still vulnerable to evil maid attacks.
It might. It's not clear. But anyway, we talked about this before. There was this Bitcoin millionaire in San Francisco that bought all these cameras, and he even went on and said, of course, I'm not giving the data to the police, and he totally is giving all the data to police. And they're using it to catch the protesters. He put like 140 blocks or something of San Francisco covered by these cameras, and they're just giving it all to the police so they can find out who's like protesting and stuff.
Wait. How do you get permission to put up cameras over several blocks in San Francisco?
I thought
neighborhoods to volunteer, to like offer to put it on their private property, and then it'd be like on a local central point where they viewed, but somehow he passed it on to the police. Hey, what are you going to say, Liz?
Oh no, I'd heard about this whole system and setup, and I asked the same question, and that was what I found out. I just didn't know that he was sending it to the police, and I had the question, well, where is all of this footage being collected? Well, and nobody knew.
They got neighbors to like form little groups and agree to like put up the cameras and have one of them like be the central place where it went. But I don't think he told them it was going to police. In fact, he publicly said it was not going to the police, and then he sent it to the police. So, now Chris Larson, this is the guy. So $4 million worth of cameras. And, it reminds me of those Google things, the doorbells. They were originally going to totally give all that to the police, and then they discovered that wasn't as popular as they thought it would be. I think he had the same feeling that, of course, we'll give it to the police. Everybody will be on board with that. But the police are there to protect us.
The Ring doorbells are totally giving all the footage to the police. In fact, They have a integrated program with the police, and my city is like one of the pilot programs for where they have some kind of police booster program, and they aggressively market those camera doorbells to everybody in the area, and just continually over and over. And they've even had which I don't understand how this is legal, but they have the cops, like the local city police, promoting these cameras.
Yeah. Well, I think I know another one is the license plate readers. They actually pay the city to put those up so they can harvest the data, and then they let the cops have it as like a promotion to put it up. So because they they get to make money from all the speeding tickets and everything they issue with them. So it's a lot of these things are the public-private partnership, like the private prisons and reform schools, where these companies take over something that was originally government activity and turn it into a profit-making activity. So anyway, it's an interesting issue, and I think a lot of people do not understand what's happening. That's why the privacy people like the EFF always say, don't create this data if you're not really sure who's going to get it or what's going to happen. At one time, when I had up the hacking lab, I thought, I'll put like keyloggers on the machine and like a camera in the room so we can practice security. And then I said, what will happen is somebody will come to me and demand that footage, and I'll be sorry I created that record. So I didn't do it.
One of the things that's insane to me about this, I mean, there are many insane things, but one of the things that's really insane is that, if all of this existed all the time and there are unsolved, rapes, murders, robberies, assaults in this neighborhood, but that wasn't enough to share this data with the police, like what is I don't understand why they would be sharing it with the cops over people protesting when they haven't done it for people committing actual crimes.
Well, this is the same thing they were bringing up in the Senate, with Bill Barr. Why is it that suddenly when people are protesting from the left that you have to bring in the stormtroopers and everything, whereas all the other crimes don't matter?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And what he told people, of course, is this way we can do something about them breaking into cars and stealing stuff out of the cars. That was the thing. And the point of the Ring doorbells is you can tell if people are stealing your packages or trying to break in your door. So at first you think, great, catching those guys would be swell. But that doesn't turn out to be what really happens. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against a surveillance state, but surveillance states need to be democratic. You can't just have the data being funneled into a organization like just the police force who can decide what to do with it. It's hard to explain. The idea that there would be cameras everywhere that you can go back and say, hey, this happened to me, let's go get the footage.
Yeah,
that's a great idea, but the problem is there's no way to put any checks on abuses. So unless we can fully democratize this data to make sure that nothing comes out unless it's kind of approved by everyone, it doesn't make sense.
No, it's very tough. And I think the other thing is all the unintended consequences, because Google had these cars mapping the street for Google Street View, and they tried to do that in Japan, and they kicked them out of the country because there are people who don't want to admit they smoke, and they sneak out to have a smoke. And even though they're out on the street, nobody's supposed to notice. And there are brothels, and there are guys going into brothels, and they totally don't want everyone knowing they're doing that. Yeah. And whereas in America, they say, well, if you're out on the street, everybody has the right to take pictures of you and put them on the web. And they totally do not agree with that in Japan. They have a different concept of privacy. And, now we know that if you had your license plate readers and just pictures of every block in San Francisco on the web, you could totally find out when people are away from their home and break into them and find out that they're going to a gay bar or buying drugs or having a moonlighting job. You could really blackmail people and ruin their life, even with what appears to be public information. So the unintended consequences are huge.
Yeah, like I said, the idea of just having a big database where if you had the proper permissions and that you could go in and get evidence for a crime against you, where you have to go through the courts and get a subpoena and all this stuff, that could work. The problem is that's not how it's being used, and it's so tempting to just be like, well, I have this footage, I'm going to use it to go after the people that I don't like, and there's no safeguards against that.
That's right. It's a big problem, and it applies to Facebook and the internet and everything. Mm-hmm. You have these unintended consequences. When I was a kid, my parents said, never use a credit card because then the government knows everything you do. I say, well, I'm not doing anything bad. And they say, you don't know how it works. Because they told me about Sacco and Vanzetti. They said, the government will just decide to hate you for your religion or your ethnic group, and then you'll be sorry that they know everything you do. Mm-hmm. And
your parents told you about who?
Sacco and Vanzetti. Sacco and Vanzetti were in the time of World War II, in the 30s. They were communists. They ran the American Revolutionary Communist Party, which was a very big thing in the 30s, and they accused them of like holding up an armored truck and shooting a guard. And in court, they proved that they were out of town when that happened. And the judge said at the end of the trial, it may be true, you have proven that they are not guilty of this crime, but they are enemies of our way of life, and he sentenced them and they were executed, even after proving that they had not committed the crime. So it was one of the most famous injustices in American jurisprudence, but it points out, how much you can't really trust the system to live up to its ideals. And so anyway, it is a problem. That's why it's good that we have privacy groups like the EFF and the ACLU that are always appear to be impeding the cops, but there's kind of a need for that voice.
Yeah, and I've always said this, that the key to a successful system is plenty of checks and balances.
Yep. All right. Well, I guess that's it. Any more comments?
Other than the fun big tech meeting, it's happening tomorrow, right?
Oh, what? You mean the one with Congress where they all have to testify?
Oh.
Yeah, they have to testify. While they do that, we're going to be busy in COBOL.
That's true. And I think we'll accomplish a lot more in COBOL than they will at that Senate hearing. From what I hear, it's going to be just a whitewash.
What's it going to be on?
Tomorrow is COBOL.
No, the Senate.
Supposedly the hearing is all four of the big tech giants, Amazon and Facebook and Google and Twitter or something, all appearing to discuss, censorship of political content and responsibility and
antitrust too.
Yeah, antitrust. From what I can hear, they're just going to whitewash everything, and no one expects much good to come out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're totally going to represent our best interests and not their own corporate interests.
We don't agree on what the best interests are right now. There's a bunch of people that think they just need to let more right-wing craziness on there, like fake coronavirus cures, and stopping that. So I don't think there's any hope of the Senate in the current arrangement passing any rules that would improve anything, because they don't even agree on what the goal is.
That's true.
So what's the language tomorrow?
COBOL.